Hello, everybody. This is Marie Gervais with Shift Management, and we're going to get started in just a minute. We're almost ready to go. And so before we get started, I want to make sure everybody knows how to type into the chat box. So you should have a little box there where you can type some things in. And if you want to just do that now and say hello so I can see who's there, that would be really great. So, there's Kay Kwang. Peng Tan, welcome. And then Atif, welcome. Thank you, Atif. Everybody just keep saying hello, and that's great, so I know that you know how to do that. That's really the only thing you'll need to be able to do. Great. Ariana, hey, you're back from your maternity leave. Awesome. Happy to see you. So we're going to be starting very soon, and we have Alison Connolly on the line here who's going to be presenting shortly. And I'm just making sure everybody's here. Oh, we got somebody from Calgary. Kim, that's wonderful. Thank you. Good. Keep on saying hello. And we're going to wait one more minute full of hellos. And while you're thinking of hellos, you might want to also be thinking about what we're going to be asking you in a minute, which is, why did you come to the webinar and what would you like to get out of it? So, and then when Alison is speaking, she can receive your questions. So get ready, think about that now. And then if you've got some ideas, you can type them into the chat box already. Hello, Val. Hello, Kim. And keep typing hellos if you haven't done so yet. Thank you. It's really good to see people. I know not everybody, if you're from your phone, you may not all be able to type in, but those that can, that's really great that you are. Everybody's on listen only, so you won't be able to speak, but you will be able to type anything that you like into the chat box. Oh, great. A few more people, Hayat and Henry. That's really great. From Fort McMurray, yay. And from Killam, woo. That's really great. It's exciting. So Alison, that's the Alison you hear laughing in the background. So I think we are now, we're going to start the broadcast. So I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar. And it is called Accent Reduction Without Losing Your Identity or Your Voice. And the reason I chose this as a topic is because last year we did a piece on accent, and it was so popular, we had more downloads than anything else. And so even though people say it's politically incorrect to talk about the word accent, I know that lots of people are concerned about their accent at work. And employers have also said that if the accent is too thick, they aren't hiring people. And so we thought, well, this is definitely a problem and a pain point, and we need to bring it up again. And this time, bring on a coach who really knows what they're talking about. So that's why I chose Alison Connolly. Now, the next thing before I get into letting Alison speak is if you can see the slides change, that would be really great. So make sure that if you can see the slide, I just changed it. It should say welcome our presenter and have a nice picture of Alison's lovely face on it. So if you can see that, please type in I see the slide change. And if you don't see the slide change, let me know. Sometimes we have that glitch with this particular one. Oh, good. So Val sees it change. That's really great. So this is Alison. She's our presenter, and she has a Master of Fine Arts in Drama and Speech, and she has been a voice and public speaking coach for many years. She's very well known in Edmonton, and she's going to talk to us today about proven techniques to overcome fear, reduce anxiety, make powerful presentations, and learn to unleash the power of your voice. So, as soon as my slide changes, as I mentioned before, we would like you to start sharing in the chat box why you came here and what you would like to learn. If you have something specific you want to get out of it, that's great. If you don't, well, I think you will have some questions that come up as we go through it. So, what Alison is going to cover today is some common pronunciation in Canadian speech, some ways to make yourself heard more effectively, and how to use your body language. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Alison. And Alison, feel free to take it away and open up your slide. So I mean, not your slide, but your camera, so that we can see your face.
So you can see me. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So great. So everybody has an accent. Believe it or not, we all have an accent, and we also strive to be heard and understood. And we don't really want to eliminate our accent because that eliminates our personality. And we don't want to sound the same as everybody else, but we do want to be clear. We want to speak clearly. So that's what we're striving to do today. When I work with clients, they often feel that their accent gets in the way of their message at work and even when they're speaking at any time. So they sit back and they don't speak. And so no one ever knows what they want to say. So today we're going to work on all that. And because what I do with clients is I give them clarity in speaking and then they get a lot of confidence. So let's go. So the
So
first one.
before I switch to the new slide, Alison, people have already
Okay.
started typing into the chat box.
Wow.
And
Okay.
one of the reasons why Mariana wants to come, she said, personally because she also has an accent, and professionally because she works with people who have accents, and she wants to gain some ideas on what to do. And then Hayat said he actually wants to reduce his accent. And then Sam said he wants to find about reason for listening. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but to gain an edge in interviews so that when he's doing an interview, he's going to have more tools. So there we go.
Oh, okay. That's great. So we'll go through all that, I think, in this. So, and if we don't, you can ask the question again. So one of the things we're going to talk about are vowels and consonants. And in our Canadian language, in our accent, we have some short vowels and long vowels. So now a short vowel is an a, e, or I. So let's just say that. A, e, I. And it's in the back of our throat. And now we're going to use some words. Mat. Mat. The mat is dirty. So say that. The mat is dirty. Met. Met. I met him. Met. Mitt. His mitt is gone. His mitt is gone. And by the way, I forgot to tell you that there will be a handout, so there is no need to write any of this down. So these are short vowels.
So, and Alison, what you're showing is the expected Canadian pronunciation of these vowels, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
So now we're going to go into our long vowels that we say. And they actually are a little bit different because they're long vowels. So on the top you say A, say that, A, E, and I. So they actually have two beats when you're saying it, like A, E, I. So now let's use it in a word, like main. Let's say that, main. The main valve is broken. The main valve is broken. And now we'll do mean. Two beats. Mean. He is so mean. Let's say that. He is so mean. And now the last one, mine. Say it. Mine. That hat is mine. So those are our three long vowels that we have in our Canadian language.
So I also want to tell the participants that this recording will be available. So if you want to check pronunciation on something later, you can have access to the recording. The recording stays on the GoToWebinar platform for until we decide to take it off. So you can always go back and you can check it, and you can even download it afterwards so you can have this to practice with. So I just thought I'd let people know. And a little bit of backtracking, I forgot, Alison, to ask you to tell a little bit about your own story in the beginning. So before we go on to the next piece, do you want to maybe tell us how you got started in what you're doing?
Well, this is interesting. So I, a very long time ago, came to Edmonton from Winnipeg, and I went and got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting at the U of A, and I was a professional actress for years. And then I had children, and being an actor, it's really hard because you don't, I would go to 10 auditions and get one role, and maybe I wasn't a very good actor. I don't know. But there was a lot of competition. And when I had my kids, I really wanted to stay home because my husband was busy doing stuff with his work. So I taught at the Citadel Theatre for 17 years. I had a company called Dramatic Learning where I went into schools and I did artisan residencies based on curriculum. And then I was the drama facilitator at the Glen Rose Rehab Hospital for 4 years. And that's where I really got interested in speech, because I worked a lot with stroke patients who had aphasia. And we did a program called Words of Courage where they would write their stories and then they'd say them out loud, and it was beautiful. And so I really got into speaking and speech. And although I'm not a speech path, I went and I got into the theater voice pedagogy program at the University of Alberta. So after 28 years, I was back at the U of A in the drama department teaching voice and speech. And so I was working mainly with actors and on their delivery as well as breath support and speech fundamentals. And then it was time to do my thesis. What am I going to do? Because I knew that although I love the acting world, I wanted to do more than that. I wanted to branch out more. So my one son, who was a very good trumpet player, had to play the trumpet for the school presentation in the Remembrance Day ceremonies, and he had a panic attack. He said, "Mom, I can't do it. I just feel awful. I can't breathe." And I got him to lie down and to breathe, and I told him that they've given you this opportunity. This is awesome for you to do. And so then I went to my prof and I said, "That's my thesis. My thesis is on alleviating performance anxiety in public presenters." So my whole practice, I work with people who are good but want to be great, those who would rather die than speak in public, and those whose accent gets in the way of their message. So that's what I do.
Great.
So I do a one-on-one, I do one-on-one coaching, and I also offer painless public speaking workshops to businesses, and I offer them once a month at Chateau Lacombe for anybody who might be self-employed or whose business might just want to take one person. So that's what I do, and I love it because I get to see all kinds of people. Yeah.
So Alison, thanks for saying that, giving us the heads up. And then you can explain that a little bit more at the end so that people can know how to get a hold of you. So now let's go on to the next part. Sorry about interrupting you, but I thought it was good to get your story in there because I know you had a good one.
So the consonants. Consonants are really important because often they're at the end of the word, and we need to sound our endings. And you know what? If you listen to the people that are born in Canada, they don't do that. We often miss our word endings. And I often get people who I coach and are presenting to a big audience say, I'm not never heard when I speak to the back of the audience. And it's breath support that they need a better base of breath, but they also need to sound the endings of their words because that will carry them to the end of the auditorium. So let's work on some consonants. So B and P, ba and pa. So let's just say that, ba, pa. Brilliant. So now we're going to use it in a word. So cab, let's say that, cab. So here's the sentence. I took a cab here. I took a cab here. Now cap, cap, say that, cap. I lost my cap. I lost my cap. So it's different. Now we've got the T's and the D's. Now, waste. Say that, waste. That book was a waste of time. Say that. That book was a waste of time. And notice how I'm not saying that book was a waste of time, right? So we need to sound our endings, but we need to kind of find a way where we don't make it all so choppy. So let's try that. That book was a waste of time. So now a D at the end. I wasted a lot of time. Say that. I wasted a lot of time. And when you are practicing these sentences, try to use different inflections. And inflection is what I mean, if I'm saying that book was a waste of time. So it's going up and down, right? Because in speech, we don't want to talk like that. So it's just something to play with. So here we are with K and G. So K and G. So that's right in the back of your throat. So try that. K and G. Brilliant. All right, so sack. Say that. Sack. I've got a sack of potatoes. I've got a sack of potatoes. Now, frog. Frog. The frog is green. The frog is green. Great. Okay, so now, what has helped you the most so far? What has been the most beneficial in this webinar?
Yeah, right now we're just looking at basic pronunciation, and until I talked to Allison about it, I didn't realize that you had to really think about the vowels and consonants so specifically right at the beginning, but it makes a lot of sense also to put it in a word and then put the word in a sentence so that you can remember. When I first tried to take Mandarin lessons a number of years ago, and the instructor gave us all these sounds to practice, but he never gave us a word or a sentence to put them in. And for 6 weeks, I had no clue what was happening. So I think it's
yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah. So so far we've just got a couple of people saying yes, but I don't see anybody else giving us anything they found helpful. But I think they will when you go on to the next couple of parts of the webinar. So we'll just move on. So
Okay.
next thing, making yourself heard.
So these are really great. Tongue twisters are fantastic. You can find them on the web. There's in books, in kids' books. Tongue twisters are great, and they're great for a couple of reasons. First of all, like I said, you can use them to inflect your voice up and down, so you can play with it and play with sound so that you're not sounding the same like that. And it's great because you work on your vowels and your consonants. The key with tongue twisters is not to say them so quickly that you lose clarity. It's to say them quickly, but keep up with the clarity. So let's just try this first one. A big black bear sat on a big black rug. So let's say that. A big black bear sat on a big black rug. Okay, let's try it a little quicker. Let's just try it just a little bit quicker. Here we go. A big black bear sat on a big black rug. Good try it. Let's see. Now the next one. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? So just try different inflections. Let's do this together. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And let's go a little bit faster, but let's keep our clarity. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? So they're just fun. And there's lots of them out there. Okay, so this, slow down and land your thoughts. When I work with clients, everyone has had the problem of speaking quickly. And I myself I'm a fast talker. So I think we do this because we're so excited to say something that we just got to say it. And we forget that the listener has heard this just now for the first time. So really take your time to land your thoughts. It's kind of like when you read to a child, you've got to read so that they can understand. Or, like me, I have an 85-year-old mother who's a tad deaf and will not buy a hearing aid. So I have to slow it down so that she can listen and hear it. So let's try this. I went to the store and bought bread, milk, and a chocolate bar. Now, why these bread, milk, and chocolate bar words are in bold is because you should land that. So that means that you're not saying, I went to the store and bought bread, milk, and a chocolate bar. That's just too fast for us to comprehend. But we're landing it. So I went to the store and bought bread, milk, and a chocolate bar. So why don't we try this? We'll try this all together. I went to the store and bought bread, milk, and a chocolate bar. And that's when we get it. That's when the listener can hear what you're saying. Because remember, you're saying something and it's important. And you want the listener to know what you're saying.
You know, Alison, this reminds me of when people who are not used to using a mic go up to a stage and they say, oh, you know, I don't need a mic, my voice is loud enough. But what they don't realize is that the audience can't hear them, no matter how
Right.
loud they are. And
Mm-hmm.
that it's not about you, it's about the audience hearing you and processing
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And people might, in fact, frequently not even hear 50% of what you say. And if you don't land the thoughts, I love this idea of landing your thoughts. If you don't land
Mm-hmm.
the thoughts, then they're going to miss the most important part.
Exactly. I think the stats on are on remembering a speech. I think after 2 days, you might remember 50% of it or 30% of it. You don't remember that much, but you'll remember the feeling that that person gave you.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So intonation. So this is a thing that sometimes we get into trouble with. So when you make a statement, your voice goes down. For example, the men are working on the rig. See, so it takes a step down. The men are working on the rig. Now, when you ask a question, your voice goes up. Are the men working on the rig? So let's see the difference. So the statement, the men are working on the rig. So try that. And you can even use your hands. The men are working on the rig. Now, are the men working on the rig? The people that I work with, sometimes they use a lot of that, they use a lot of questions at the end of sentences. And sometimes they do it because subconsciously they're thinking, is this the right sentence I should be saying? So it could be a part of that too. So just remember that when you're stating something, it's firm and you're stating it and it goes down. And when you ask a question, it inflects up.
So, Alison, we just got another question that I wanted to just pop at you right away,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's interesting. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it though. So the question is, what are the important differences between Canadian and American English? Please, in this example, let us know. What are some of the main noun sounds? And the reason
Well,
I said it's not that you don't know how to answer it, it's just that there are so many different dialects in Canada and in the US that it might be
yeah,
hard to.
it is really hard. Like, for example, in Boston, it's Boston. In Boston, that's a O, Boston. In New York, it's New York. So it really depends on each different area of America. So if you really want to find out, there's I think it's called Accent Help, and you can actually I don't know how much it is. It might be $20, and you get this whole download of a certain area that you want to study, and you can see what those specific sounds are. But it's different for each different region. It seems just like for us. If you've ever been
Yeah,
to Newfoundland, it's different. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite different. Even I can hear the difference between people who are from different provinces. Like I can tell when someone's from Saskatchewan,
You know what?
or
And
yeah,
I'm from Manitoba, and
mhm.
my husband and I went to the Muskokas to visit a friend of ours, and he said to me, and I hadn't lived in Winnipeg for like 25 years, and he said, "Oh, I can tell you're from Manitoba because you have that yeah, yeah, yeah tone." Really? Anyway, I had no idea.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this might be a time for me to add that little story that I mentioned when we were first talking, which is my
Yeah.
son, who was born in Canada, and he lives in the States now, and he has dual citizenship. And when he moved to the States, he had a terrible time finding work, and he's very qualified. So he should have had no barriers. He's a very good-looking young man with a lot of capacity and education. He's white, so he doesn't have a racial barrier against him. So he was going, why am I having such a hard time finding work? And he finally figured it out. Accent prejudice. So he went to a speech coach in California, which is where he lives, and said,
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference between the way the Californians speak and the way I speak? And the Californian speech coach spent an hour with him, taught him a few tricks, and in a week he had a job. because people
Unbelievable.
thought he sounded too Canadian. They didn't know what Canadian
Yeah.
was, but they thought he sounded too Canadian. So I think
Yeah.
I'm going to look for that accent help thing and see if I can
Mm-hmm.
send it to people later in a follow up. But also, if you are in a certain area, you need to speak like the people in that area. So that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's even different from cities and from towns. So rural areas will speak differently than the city
Mm-hmm.
people do. So just
And
something to keep
also,
in
and
mind.
also, I think rural areas, their speech is slower because they're taking their time more. Because
Yeah.
even because when I was going into different communities teaching drama, I would see that all the time in
Hmm.
rural communities. They're just more chill. We're just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. And also
Mm-hmm.
the more extremes you go, like to the north and the south, the more you find the accents. And you really hear that in Quebecois French. So, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also true in the rural areas and other parts
Mm-hmm.
of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's
Okay.
move on.
Okay, so useful phrases. These are some phrases that you could interject, in everyday speech to sound, you know, part of the community. So things like I see, and you can say it in different ways, like I see, I see. So try that. And then really, really. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Got it. Got it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. Right. Oh, no. Oh, no. And there are a couple that we didn't put in, like dude or perfect.
Those are good ones to practice because they're so short that you can put in the inflection, also the
Yeah.
consonants and the vowels. Really,
Yeah.
really, I think that's a great choice, Allison.
It's great. Yeah. It's fun,
So
too.
how are people finding this so far? Do you think this is useful? Oh, we're getting more questions.
Good.
Any tips about what can be used to ensure that your voice does not go up at the end of a statement if that's a habit you have? Ooh, good one. Can you answer that one?
You know what I would say if that's a habit? We all have this on our phone. We have a little record. I would record. I would talk, say a couple of lines of anything. You know, I had a cup of tea this morning, whatever it is, and see if that's a pattern. And actually, what we have to do, because it's a habit, we have to change our neural pathways in our brain to change the habit.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it could take a little
And
time.
it,
Yeah.
you know, it could take a little time, but it's well worth it because Naomi Campbell, who writes for The Guardian, wrote an article about upspeak and vocal fry, mainly in women, but she did talk about men, I think. And she talks about this questioning at the end of sentences is called upspeak. And it's
You
I
might
don't know.
hear it if you record yourself on your phone and
Yeah,
then listen to it afterwards.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So body language is next. And anything that you are finding helpful, please go ahead and type that in the chat box. And anytime you have a question, put it in there. Really appreciative of
Mm-hmm.
everybody's questions so far. It's making it
Mm-hmm.
great.
Body language. So believe it or not, body language and nonverbals are really important in life and in speech. So in 1971, a scientist did a study and he wanted to see how we perceive the meaning of a word through the tone of the voice, body language, or the word itself. And 55% of how we perceive the meaning of the word is through body language. 38% is tone, and 7 is the word. And what do we worry about? We worry about those words. But if you see here, you've got a high power pose and a low power pose. Now, Amy Cuddy, who is a social psychologist in Boston, did a study, or she did a test, and what she did was she had people maintain a low power pose for 2 minutes, and another group maintain a high power pose for 2 minutes. And then she did a saliva test for cortisol, which is our stress hormone. The low power posers had a spike in cortisol, and they felt low self-esteem and low self-worth. And these high power poses had a spike in testosterone, the confidence hormone, and they felt great. And they felt like, they had great self-esteem. So her talk is that you don't need to fake it till you make it. Fake it till you become it. So if
when you're faking it, you're actually just becoming it already.
You're becoming it. And she says 2 minutes and you will change the way you think and feel about yourself. Because that's what she wanted to know. She wanted to know, because we talk about positivity and we talk about, we've got to remember that what our speech is going to be fantastic and people really want to hear us and all that. So we're doing that in our mind. But her whole thing is, can our body language change the way our mind or the way we think and feel about ourselves? And it does. So
people can see it really, really easily.
Yeah, you can.
I did an assertiveness workshop for a group of engineers a few months ago, and I had them just walk into the room, stand in front of the room, and look at everybody, and then walk off. And then we practiced, having a powerful stance and having a low power stance. And it was really interesting how many of the engineers walked in with a low power stance. And once they practiced the power stance, people were like clapping for them, and they didn't even say anything. They were going, "Wow, you looked really great," or "I could hardly wait to hear what you had to say." And all they did was walk up, look at the crowd, and walk away. So it definitely makes a difference.
And clients, when I show them this, they'll say, "Well, that's fine, Allison, but I perceive myself as being arrogant." And I said, you're only arrogant if you say arrogant words. I've been in a power pose now for many years because it just makes me feel confident. It makes me feel good. And again, with this TED Talk, Amy Cuddy talks about, they actually did a study with actors, like in this low power pose. They were waiting for an interview. So they would all sit like this. And the interviewee didn't know that this was kind of staged. So they're sitting like this the whole time. And then the high power posers were sitting upright. And then they interviewed for the job. And the high power posers got the job regardless of their resume. So it's quite interesting.
Wow, that's really important. Yeah. Very important, yeah. And combine that with really clear speech and slowing down and landing your thoughts, and you're going to ace that interview.
You're going to ace it. So our next slide, I think we're going to do this. So now let's try first. I'd like us to try sitting in a low pose. So that, you saw what this woman was like. So just sit in that low pose, and now note what's going on in your breath. Like, how are you breathing? Are you breathing full breaths? Are you breathing short little breaths? What are you thinking in your head when you're in this low pose? And where is your focus? Where are your eyes? Now, let's change that. And let's adopt a high power pose. And you can even stand, or you could do it sitting. Have both feet planted on the ground. And what's going on now? How do you feel? What are you thinking? How are you breathing? Has your breath dropped a little more into your belly? Are you taking fuller breaths? And where is your eye contact? Where are your eyes? Are there any observations?
Yeah, if people want to type something into the chat box about how they noticed that when they were making the change. I noticed, I was doing this as you were talking, and I noticed that when I'm looking down and I'm breathing shallowly in my chest, and what I see is my hands or my lap, right? And then when I sat up tall, I felt sort of more energetic right away, and and stronger. And I also noticed that my breathing went down a bit, so it was lower.
And also, if you ever think if you've ever seen someone speak when they've been in that low pose, what happens to you as an audience? It also makes us kind of crumble. And if we see someone in a high pose, we try to aspire to that person.
Yeah, it would make us want to be like that person, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so feel free to type in your response about if you haven't done, if you weren't doing it while Alison was talking about it, then this might be a time to try it. And as soon as you've got a response, feel free to put it in the chat box so we can let everybody know.
Yeah.
Okay, now Mike Bowden.
Okay, Mark Bowden. He is a body language specialist, and he's actually Canadian. And he started looking at people in different ways, and so he talks about the truth plane. Now, imagine this. Think of images of Jesus and Buddha and Mother Teresa. And where did they have their hands? They had their hands like this. And they do that, and this is what he calls the truth plane. And why this is the truth plane, just like that, there you go. And why this is the truth plane is because when your hands are in this area, you feel more genuine and you seem more genuine to the audience and you're more engaging. And one more thing, it actually activates your rest and digest sympathetic nervous system. So it calms you down. And I know some people use their hands a lot and some people don't. And it's again, this is something to work on and just to try and see if you can feel any difference. So right now you could start moving your hands and see if it feels any different to you as opposed to this. Because if you have your arms straight down by your sides, he calls this the grotesque plane. And we all know speakers that speak like this. And what happens is, you can even hear in my voice. My voice is now kind of in the back of my throat. And I don't feel that engaging. I'm kind of tired. But if I use my hands, I feel more engaging. And my inflection of my voice goes up and down. Look at her. She's lovely. Yeah. So it's a really neat trick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, one more point. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Look at this woman. She's breathing. You know, we have breathed since we were born, and yet something happens when we get older and we acquire tension and habits, and we start breathing in little shallow breaths. And we do that sometimes because we're anxious, and then we just breathe from our chest. Or sometimes because we are so excited about what you're saying that we want to jump in. I want to just jump into what you're saying. So I'll take a little gasp of breath. But really, we want to just settle and breathe. And this is what happens. So this is our diaphragm. And when we take a breath, it flattens and allows the breath to come into our lungs and our ribs to splay out. And we breathe to our capacity. But because we often take little short breaths, we don't get that full capacity. And then our sound can't carry to the end of the auditorium because we often run out of breath. So now let's have a little test. Take one hand on your chest and one hand on your lower belly and breathe in and out. And when you breathe in, note which hand moves first. So ideally, you want to have your lower hand breathe first, because that means it's dropping in to your belly. But as I said, we have our habits. So I've got some exercises on the handout, but I'll give you one right now. So think of a balloon. When we blow a balloon, we blow it from the bottom to the top. So now with that image, have your hands on your chest and on your lower belly and breathe in and out and feel like that breath is dropping low into your belly. And while you're doing that, think of releasing any tension that you might have. And I don't talk about relaxing because relaxing is like this. Releasing is just allowing the tension to go. So that's our breath. And on top of the breath thing, when we are saying a speech, we've got that thing at the end, and the thing at the end of a sentence, and that is called a period, and that is a stop. And you could feel free to take a breath, because then we can carry on to the next phrase and sentence.
Mhm. Yeah, so you don't want to run through your sentences. You could stop
No.
at the end of the sentence, and that's when you can breathe. And if you've been breathing too high in your chest and because you're feeling nervous, then that would be a good place for you to catch your breath again, right?
Exactly, exactly. And bear in mind, taking a breath is just a few seconds, and the audience will wait because they really want to hear what you have to say.
And people feel bad for you when you're nervous and can't breathe. They start to feel like they're choking up themselves when they hear you not
I'll
breathing.
tell you, I went to it was, I won't say where I went because people will know, but I went to a festival a year ago, and this woman came on and she had a great story. She was actually making mayonnaise out of chickpeas. Great idea. So first of all, I hear her hit her mic. She's backstage and she's hitting her mic, and she says, "Isn't my mic on?" Yes, it was on. Then she comes on and she's pacing back and forth and she's just rattling through everything. And then her slides fall apart and she falls apart. And I turned to my husband. I said, "Oh, I just want to just go and hug her and give her my card," but she was going off to the States. But it's just, it was sad for me because she had such a great product and she just needed to stop and breathe. And, because stuff happens and problems happen, but we just have to go on. The show must go on.
And didn't you also have a client who, because he wasn't able to speak uh, confidently, he didn't contribute, and then now he's contributing. It seems to me you told me something about that.
Yes, yes. I started working with him and he just felt that he couldn't, when they were asked a question around the boardroom table, he would never answer, even though he knew it. And then he started working with me and he started answering questions and his supervisors were saying, "Whoa, this is so cool. You're really improving." So yeah. And then now he can look and he can say, "Oh, that colleague of mine, he really needs your help." Because he can see how, he's not in his power pose and he's not breathing. And so it's really cool because when I work with people, they start noticing what they like about speakers and what they think they can improve, so it's really cool.
So all of the things that you just explained to us are going to make a big difference in clear speech, and they will also reduce just the edge of your accent because
Yes.
you're not going to eliminate your accent, and you
No,
don't want to,
we don't want to
like you
eliminate
mentioned
it.
in the
We
beginning.
don't.
Yeah.
No,
But
no.
to take the edge off so people can understand you more clearly and they aren't asking you to repeat yourself or looking
Mhm.
blank, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you want to maybe recap what we just covered, and then there is time for questions, and so I'm hoping people will put some questions into the chat box. There were a whole bunch of them in the beginning, but now I'm not seeing any. So feel free to type them in so we can ask a few questions
Yeah.
to
So
Allison.
so did you so common pronunciation in Canadian speech, there are those few vowels and consonants that really make a difference. Ways to make yourself heard more effectively through intonation, through different the different phrases that I gave you, and your body language is paramount. I tell you, if you go to work tomorrow and you've got that power pose, you'll just be breathing better, you'll be feeling more confident, and people will go, "Wow, that's so cool." Yeah. Yeah. So
Hmm.
are there any questions?
Yeah, so that was very helpful. I really liked it, and I think that how can people practice this on their own? And do you have any tools you would recommend to them, Allison?
Well, I would say, first of all, there's that handout. For pronunciation, I would get Dr. Seuss books. Because
Hmm.
Dr. Seuss books are great because they have a lot of repetitive sounds in things, and I think that would help. And they also have repetitive consonants as well. So Dr. Seuss would be my thing.
Like the Cat in the Hat or Green
The
Egg
Cat in
Ham
the
and things like
Hat.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well that's
And
handy because those you can find in the library. They're pretty much everywhere. You
they're
can find them
easy.
online too,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of things that can help people with their pronunciation, intonation, and things like that.
And I would also read out loud. So the Dr. Seuss books are great for vowels and that, but I would actually take, if you're reading anything, read it out loud and see if you're inflecting up, see if you okay, that word, I'm going to that vowel, that's a long vowel, main, I'm going to give it 2 beats. Just it's all practice. And then body language, start today. Just start today.
With the power pose.
With the power pose and with this truth plane. Yeah.
So tell people how they can get a hold of you, Alison, and why they would want to get a hold of you.
Well, this is here. I've got my website. I've got an email, and you can also call me. I work with, like I said, I work with people who are good but want to be great, those who rather die than speak in public, and those who need accent to help clarity with their accents. And I just think that for me, I love working with people because I love to help them and to help you. And it's I know because sometimes I've been in, especially when I went back to get my master's, I would be in rooms where I don't really know a lot about this yet, and so I would just sit back and not say anything. And I know that feeling of feeling like, ooh, I do kind of know something, but I'm afraid to say it because what if I sound awful or dumb or whatever. So I get that, and I have a great relationship with my clients, and I can work with you once a week. I can work with you once a month. I work with some people on a specific project. Sometimes I just work because people just need that work on an ongoing basis.
And you have those workshops once a month too
I
that
have the
people could put
workshops once a month.
their
Yeah.
name on the list. If they
Exactly.
email you, they can, yeah.
And I
We
only
have,
have 8 people in my workshop. So it's small. It's 3 hours. It's very small because you get time with me and you get time, positive feedback with the group. So it's a lovely group that we work with. Yeah.
there is a question here from Kwang, and Kwang says, when I'm nervous, I tend to speed up my speech, and then my pitch goes higher. How can I improve that?
So it's all about breath as well. So you need to drop your breath, and you need to, that thing at the end of a sentence is a period, and you need to take that and breathe. And you also need to land your thoughts. So for example, if you're writing a speech, you can actually highlight the words that you are going to emphasize and land. And that actually gives you time. So you have to take the time to do that because often we're just racing. And just remember that the audience, this is the first time they've heard you. So you need to be clear. So slow it down.
Maybe also thinking about what you have to say before you say it, so that you know what you want to land. And something else that people use if they're in a meeting is they have cue cards or a notebook and they write a few things down so that before they speak they have it more clearly in their mind, and it's also in front of them so that they can underline those words that matter.
Yeah. So often people they'll either have a speech with a page or they'll use cue cards, and that's exactly it. So they'll just write it down, and hopefully you have practiced it enough out loud. That's what a lot of my clients, when they first come, have never done. They've never practiced a speech out loud. So they've written this fabulous speech. We know that 7% of how we perceive a word is the speech. They've written this great, but they've never practiced it. So once you practice it out loud, then you'll know, oh, this is how I want to say this, and this is what I want to emphasize. Also, I don't know if you've ever heard of Stephen Covey. He wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he talks about begin with the end in mind. What do you want the audience to get out of what you are saying? What do you want them to do? What is their call to action? So if you're thinking about all these things, you don't have time to rush because you really want to land everything.
That's a very good point. We just got a lovely compliment. Thank you for making this helpful webinar available to us. I've learned that slowing down my pace and introducing pauses, particularly after key messages, can give an added impact to what I'm saying. Alison provided examples in the sentence, I went to the store and bought bread, milk, and a chocolate bar. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. That's Adibi, I think, who said that. And that's when, I would need to get some coaching to make sure that I can say his name correctly, which I would definitely. So that's what we've got, and I really appreciate Alison taking the time to put this presentation together. I think it's very practical and very helpful. And I also wanted to tell you we do have another really interesting webinar coming up. And this is one that has come out so many times, and this is the second highest amount of downloads that we got for all of our stuff. And anything that we wrote to work with difficult people everybody's downloading it. And this one is Eileen Marcus, who's an expert in dealing with difficult and annoying people. That's what she specializes in, believe it or not. And she, on February 8th, is going to give us this very interesting webinar. And so you probably want to sign up for that. I'm not giving you the link right now because we're going to send you a follow-up email that will have a link in it tomorrow. So get that first link. And so that can help us to work with really difficult people. So now that you know how to land your thoughts and speak clearly, next we're going to tackle dealing with annoying people. That's coming up February the 8th. And also let you know that this webinar series, which is monthly and which is free, is sponsored by Shift Management. And we have a Shift Academy, which has online courses, online learning for professional development and happiness at work. And you're definitely going to want to check it out. And we will send you a few links to show you what you can do next. So, Alison, do you have any closing thoughts before we end the webinar today?
Well, I would just say, remember that when you're speaking, you have something to say and you're important. And people really want to hear you. So, adopt your high power pose, use your true plane and all those things, and practice, practice, practice.
Yes. I love that people do want to hear you. And that's, if you start with the idea people want to hear me, that is going to be the biggest attitude change, I think. People do want to hear you. So one last compliment from Val before we end the webinar. And Val wrote, seeing the percentage of how people perceive and receive what we're saying was very insightful. So there we go. So thanks again, Alison. That was wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And we're gonna, it was great. And I'm gonna sign off and say goodbye to everybody. And watch, if you haven't done it, please download the handouts. You should see them right there, right above your chat box. And then we are also going to be sending you some follow-up emails that will explain to you more things. And one of the emails will have Alison's contact information in addition to, it's already in the handout. So. Happy speaking, everybody, and I'm sure everybody's going to love listening to you. I'd want to hear every single one of you. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Bye.